We're going to take a look at dividing by a decimal. But before we do that, I want to take a look at a few things. So in the upper left here, we have 6 divided by 3, which of course is 2. I want to look to see what the quotient would be if we multiplied the divisor and the dividend by 10. So 6 times 10 is 60, and 3 times 10 is 30. And now 60 divided by 30 is 2. The quotient's the same. Now I want to multiply the divisor and dividend times 100. So 6 times 100 is 600, and 3 times 100 is 300. 600 divided by 300 is 2. So I notice that when I multiply the dividend by 10 and the dividend by 100 and the divisor by 10 and the divisor by 100, we still get the same answer. Let's try this again. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. So 80 divided by 20 still makes 4. And 800 divided by 200 is 4. So when you take a division problem and you multiply the dividend and divisor times 10, you still get the same answer. If you multiply the dividend and divisor times 100, you still get the same answer. And it's true for 1,000 and 10,000 and so on. So let's remember that. Now in the bottom, I just want to recall how to multiply a decimal or even a whole number times 10. So 5 and 7/10 times 10. I just move the decimal point one spot to the right. So that equals 57. And now 9 and 614 thousandths. If I want to multiply that times 10, I get 96 and 14 hundredths, because to multiply by 10, I just move the decimal point one spot to the right. Now on the bottom, I have 83 times 10, so I need to move the decimal point one spot to the right, and the decimal point's right here. Every number has a decimal point at the end. We just don't always write it. So if I want to multiply 83 times 10, I just move the decimal point one spot to the right, and I get 830. So to multiply a decimal or even a whole number times 10, you just move the decimal point one spot to the right. And to multiply by 100, you move it 2 spots to the right, and 1,000, 3 spots to the right, and so on. Looking at these things will really help us divide by a decimal. So here we go. We're going to divide by a decimal. I have 7 and 22 hundredths divided by 8 tenths. So since I'm dividing by 8 tenths, that's a little tricky to divide by 8 tenths. So I'm going to eliminate that decimal in the divisor. So I'm going to do that by moving it one spot to the right. So now it's not 8 tenths, it's just 8. And now I'm going to do the same thing over here with the dividend. I'm going to move it one spot to the right. So now my decimal point is here and it's no longer here. And so it seems a little strange that I'm just moving decimal points, but what I was really doing was multiplying the divisor and the dividend by 10. And we just learned that if you multiply the divisor and dividend by 10, you still get the same answer. So this way I can eliminate that decimal from the divisor, and now I can just divide by 8. So I just moved it over one spot here, one spot here, and I know I'll still get the same answer. And I'm going to bring that decimal point straight up into the quotient so I don't forget it later. And now I'm just going to divide like normal. So 8 does not divide into 7. 8 goes into 72 9 times. 9 times 8 is 72. 72 minus 72 is 0. Now I bring down the 2. 8 divides into 2 0 times. 0 times 8 is 0. 2 minus 0 is 2. And I can't write a remainder because when you're dividing decimals, you can't have a remainder. So I'm going to add a 0 here to the end. And it's all right because you can still add a 0 to the end of a decimal and it doesn't change its value. So now I can bring down the 0. So now my next step is to divide. 20 divided by 8 is 2. 2 times 8 is 16. 20 minus 16 is 4. And so now I need to bring down again, so I'm going to add another 0 to the end of that decimal and bring it down. And 40 divided by 8 is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. 40 minus 40 is 0. Now I have my answer, 9 and 25 thousandths right here. Let's look at another one. So I have 6 and 92 hundredths divided by 50 hundredths. So I'm going to eliminate that decimal from the divisor. So I'm going to move it 2 spots to the right. And what I really did was multiply it by 100. So since I multiplied the divisor by 100, I need to now multiply the dividend by 100. So I'm going to move it over 2 spots to the right. So now my decimal point is after the 2 right here, and it's no longer here. So what I did was I multiplied the divisor times 100 and the dividend times 100. And I know I'll still get the same answer if I do that. Remember at the beginning when we said if you multiply the divisor and dividend by 100, still get the same answer. So now I'm ready to divide by 50 instead of 50 hundredths. So I can bring the decimal point straight up. And now I'm just going to divide like normal. So I'm going to divide by 50. So 50 doesn't divide into 6, but it goes into 69 once. 1 times 50 is 50. 69 minus 50 is 19. These are all the steps we've been following all along. And now I need to bring down the 2. 50 divides into 192 3 times. And 3 times 50, I can count by 50s, 50, 100, 150, 3 50s makes 150. Now I subtract. There we go. And my next step is to bring down. Now I'm going to add a 0 to the end of this decimal because there's a decimal point right here. So I can bring it down. 420 divided by 50 is 8. 8 times 50 is 400. 420 minus 400 is 20. Time to bring down. Got to bring down another 0. And 200 divided by 50 is 4. And I got 13 and 84 hundredths. Now let's look at this one over here. So I'm dividing by 4 tenths, and I want to eliminate that decimal. So I'm going to move the decimal point 1 spot to the right. So now I need to move the decimal point in the dividend 1 spot to the right. So there's a decimal point right here. Every number has a decimal point at the end. We just don't always write it. So now I'm going to take this decimal point and move it 1 spot to the right. So now my decimal point is here. I'm going to append a 0. So now I can bring my decimal point straight up. Now I can just divide like normal. Now I'm dividing by 4. I'm no longer dividing by 4 tenths because I moved that decimal point 1 spot. And since I moved it 1 spot here, I move it 1 spot here. So now I'm ready to divide. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 8 is 0. Bring down the 3. 3 divided by 4 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. 3 minus 0 is 3. Bring down the 0. 30 divided by 4 is 7. 7 times 4 is 28. 30 minus 28 is 2. Now I need to bring down a 0, so I add a 0 there, bring it down. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Got none left over, and here's my answer, 207 and 5 tenths. Here's 2 more. 4 and 6 tenths divided by 25 hundredths. So I got to make sure that I set this up right. So this is 4 and 6 tenths divided by 25 hundredths. So I'm going to move the decimal 2 spots, 1, 2. So now I move it 2 spots here, 1, 2. So my decimal point is here. I'm going to bring it straight up. So I add a 0 there to hold the place. Now I can divide like normal. So my decimal point is right here. 46 divided by 25 is 1. 1 times 25 is 25. 6 minus 5 is 1. 4 minus 2 is 2. Bring down the 0. 210 divided by 25 is 8. 8 times 25 is 200. 210 minus 200 is 10. So now I can add a 0 to the end. Bring it down. 100 divided by 25 is 4. And I get 18 and 4 tenths is my answer. Now here's another one, 711 divided by 3 tenths, and I would set it up just like this. And now I need to move the decimal point one spot here. So now I can just divide by 3, and I've got to move my decimal point in the dividend one spot. So the decimal is here, and I just move it over one spot. Now my decimal is here, so I'm going to move it straight up into the quotient and fill that spot up with a 0. And follow my steps for dividing. 7 divided by 3 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring down the 1. 11 divided by 3 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 11 minus 9 is 2. Bring down the 1. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 7 times 3 is 21. 21 minus 21 is 0. And I still got to bring down that 0. So I bring it down. 0 divided by 3 is 0. 0 times 3 is 0. And 0 minus 0 is 0. So I get 2,370. And here's our last one. So now I'm going to eliminate this decimal in the divisor. And this time I need to move the decimal point 3 spots. So now I'm going to move the decimal point out here 3 spots. 1, 2, 3. So my decimal point is here in my answer. Right up here, and I gotta fill in my places with 0, so now I'm going to divide like normal. When I was moving the decimal point, this time I multiplied by 1,000 because I moved the decimal points 3 spots to the right. So if you multiply the divisor and dividend by 1,000, you still get the same quotient. So now I'm ready to divide. 7 divided by 5 is 1. I'm just dividing by 5 here, even though all those zeros are there. If you want to just cross them out so it doesn't get confusing, that's fine. 7 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. 7 minus 5 is 2. Bring down the 6. 26 divided by 5 is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 26 minus 25 is 1. Bring down the 4. 14 divided by 5 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. 14 minus 10 is 4. And I bring down the 0. 40 divided by 5 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 minus 40 is 0. I gotta bring down all the digits, so I bring down a 0. 0 divided by 5 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. And there's my answer, 15,280.